And welcome everyone to RedRaiders.com. I'm Zach Long, this is Krista Pirtle, and you're on our Texas Tech basketball season preview as we look at the Red Raiders and the Lady Raiders and what could be one heck of a season in terms of storylines, Krista. Two new head coaches, one on each side of the ball. Of course, Tubby Smith takes over the men's program after stops at Kentucky and Minnesota. And on the women's side, they go get one of their own in Candy Whitaker. She'll be tasked with returning the Red Raiders to the glory days of which she was a part of. 2 Sweet 16 appearances as a coach. A lot of storylines for Texas Tech basketball this season.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting because as they both come into these two different programs, they're both trying to get these teams back to the NCAA tournament, and we'll see how it goes in year one.
And Krista, we're going to be honest here, it's going to be a tough road ahead. A lot of losses on both of these teams. They're going to rely on a ton of youth to make themselves better. So right now I want to look at some of the fresh faces on these rosters who they're going to rely upon this season. Let's start first with Candy Whitaker and the Lady Raiders.
The Lady Raiders lost 5 guards last year to graduation, and coming in they've got 2 good ones. These 2 girls both played together on an AAU team, DFW Elite. The first one is Diamond Lockhart. She's going to be the point guard this year, so she has that special relationship, if you will, with Coach Whitaker, where she was also the point guard at Tech, so they've been able to communicate and go over X's and O's and get things done. The second is Jasmine Caston. She told me she is the shooter. When Coach Curry actually had her come in, she said, "You are going to be a shooter for this team," and that role has stuck with Whitaker, and she can shoot from any spot on the court. And
they're going to need that scoring from those guards because not a lot of size inside for the Lady Raiders. Over on the men's side, speaking of point guards, they of course lose Josh Gray. Transferred out of Texas Tech, was really one of the few bright spots on that roster last year. They're going to need some help there. Are there some fresh faces who could provide that?
They have got junior college transfer Robert Turner coming in at the point guard. At the little scrimmage we got to see last week, he ran the floor well, he passed the ball efficiently, he led New Mexico Junior College to some great games, some good wins last season. And then also coming in is Alex Foster. He originally committed to Minnesota, found out that Coach Smith was fired, and then had to go back through the recruiting process again of what school do I want to go to, do I want to go here, do I want to go here, and he said ultimately he fell back into Tubby's lap and he's here at Tech.
And that's a very key point, Krista. Texas Tech's future as a men's basketball program right now, Tubby Smith's hire, I think it's very evident when you see it, he is to stabilize this program. That is his job, and the first step in that is recruiting, and he is one heck of a recruiter, and maybe no better testament to that than the young man you just mentioned, Alex Foster.
That process was outrageous because it just happened so suddenly. I mean, at first I was going to Minnesota, and then all of a sudden the coach got fired, and then it was just like, okay, what am I going to do? So, I mean, the whole process, I had to go back and, reevaluate different schools, and then I eventually fell back in Tubby's lap. He's just a down-to-earth person. Like, I could always connect with him, and when me and him talked, it was just always, it's almost like a father-son relationship a little bit. So once I felt that way, I knew my decision. He's had a lot of success in the past, so I'm sure, and I trust in all his works and everything, so I'm sure it's going to do good.
Krista, before we get into the season predictions, I think first we got to look at the schedule for both these basketball teams, and it's the Big 12 Conference. You know it's going to be tough, especially on the men's side. 2 real big-time elite teams in Kansas and Oklahoma State. The women's side, a little bit down, still going to be tough, plenty of talent there. Let's look at the schedules and see some of the tripping points and some of the challenges for the Red Raiders. Let's start first, though, on the women's side and Candy Whitaker's Red Raiders.
I think it all starts in the non-conference with the tournament that the Lady Raiders play in Barclays Center in Brooklyn. They have some tough competition with Michigan and either LSU or Rutgers. I think that's really going to be a measuring stick as to how they have progressed throughout this month of November. But as for conference play right now, the Big 12 ranked them dead last in the conference. But I think if they can come out and perform well against TCU and Kansas State, who lost point guard Brittany Chambers, they can come out finishing 7th or 8th in the conference instead.
Which is going to be a telltale sign. That's a very tough schedule, but hey, you want to be the best, you got to go through the best, and usually the Big 12 on the women's side, one of the best conferences in the country. Over on the men's side, Krista, oh my goodness gracious, this is an extremely tough schedule. Tubby Smith has been preaching teamwork. You can see why when you look at the slate.
Oh man, and Coach Smith said that this is probably the toughest schedule he's ever come in and faced. Once again, the guys are going up to Brooklyn to play in a tournament in Barclays Center. They're taking on Pitt and either Houston or Stanford, both top teams, and then it's just the Big 12 is tough. You've got Kansas, Oklahoma State, you've got Baylor, you've got Iowa State on the rise. Kansas State did lose Angel Rodriguez, their point guard, but there's no easy game on this schedule, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Red Raiders fare.
going to be very much a character testing year on the men's side of the schedule. It's a very tough schedule. He's got some talent, but they're going to find out where they're at real fast with that schedule. Krista, back over to the Texas Tech women and the Lady Raider basketball program. Things were going a little bit sour the last few years. I don't think that's any secret. Christy Curry had ran her course with, I think, both the fans and the administration, if you want my honest opinion. It was time for a change, and I think she really ultimately gave a gift to the Texas Tech Nation when she stepped away and took the Alabama job. That put the ball in the lap of Kirby Hocutt and Marcia Sharp to go make a big-time hire, and it looks like they did exactly that with Candy Whitaker.
Just a dream come true, you know, just never expected it this soon. Obviously always dreamed of it sometime in my career, having the opportunity to come here and coach, but by no means expected it this soon in my career.
Well, Kirby Hocutt really drove that, of course, and he did such a great job, I think, of trying to consider all the things that were going to be important in this hire. And I think something that he really was adamant about was having someone here who would really fit into the culture in West Texas. And of course she played here and is from West Texas, from Canyon, and I think that was something that really immediately put her on his radar. From there, the fact that she was a part of this program, and then after the interview she completely sold herself. She really has such a great plan and has such a great feel for the tradition of this program and all of West Texas and what that should look like, that I think it was pretty apparent that she was a great candidate.
Just excited to see our kids play and let them have that opportunity. You know, we have no returning, starters and no returners with a lot of minutes. So there's a lot of unknowns, which is scary and exciting all at the same time, but just excited to get going and have them have the chance to play in this arena and play in front of these great fans.
She was terrific. She has all those qualities that you love. You particularly love them in a point guard. She brought a toughness to our team, a focus that we probably didn't get from any other player on the floor at that time. She understood about attempting to put a team together. It was never about her. It was about the good of that group, and all those are qualities that you love in any player, and particularly when they're a point guard. I think that's important. She has a sense of loyalty and a fierce loyalty, actually, for the things that she's about and the people that are around her and the things that are important in her world. And I think all of those have transferred over in her ability to be a great coach.
Yeah, I think that does describe me as a coach and as a player, and the competitive side of me. I've always been competitive. I love to compete. And I think you have to be tough. I think I can also be very empathetic and soft at times as well. But when we step on the floor, I think we all know what it takes to win at this level, and it is tough. It's a tough job, and it's a tough role.
I've told her this, and I actually have told a lot of folks since she's been hired that she's a person who really knew what she wanted to do. This was her dream job, and from the time she played here forward, all the decisions that she's made professionally in her world have been to attempt to have an opportunity someday to coach here.
I just have loved the game. It's fun for me. I don't shy away from looking at what other people do and taking things that I like, and just continuing to grow as a coach. I think that's a big part of the game. You got to have great players that can make those plays, but the fun part of coaching is kind of playing the chess match and manipulating some of it.
Well, first of all, she doesn't need much help. She gets this, and all the things that you're going to watch her do is because of Candy Whitaker. There may be a few things that we can talk about from a tradition standpoint, and some things that maybe from a fan standpoint, trying to create that atmosphere that she played under and that she played in here at Tech, and the things that she loved about having 13,000 people in this arena, and all the things that go around that are things that I probably can help her with more than anything else. She doesn't need any help X's and O's, and fundamentally she's as good a coach as there is in the country. And
it's fun. I told Matt the other day, we were driving, I said, how good does it feel to be home? It just feels comfortable. We have family close by, we have friends in Lubbock and in the surrounding areas, so it's just nice to live somewhere where I know people and where I feel at home.
You don't want to strive for mediocrity. That's the goal here is to win. and there's nothing I would love more than for them to hang some conference title banners and certainly NC2A appearances and things like that. And that's going to happen. We're going to be there. We may have to get some things to happen here for a year, and you know, there are going to be some challenges, obviously, because there were so many starters that were lost, and particularly when they lost Baker early in the year. But she's going to get them there, and there are going to be a lot more banners in this arena.
And Krista, I know you've been hanging around practice and have a really good inside look at the women's program. What have you noticed about Candy Whitaker?
I really like how she runs practice. If she needs something to look right, she'll get in there and do it and say, this is what I want. She preaches you need to communicate, because with this offense they're cutting a lot and they want each other to know, hey, I'm going to do this, because not many of these girls knew each other when they came in. And so just how she runs practice, if things aren't done the right way, she'll stop it and say, okay, maybe I explained it poorly, let me do it again and see if you can catch this. So I guess what she brought as a point guard, a floor general, she wants things done the right way and she won't take it done the wrong way, is how she's doing it with this team, and she's making sure that they're getting things done.
Her intensity will never be doubted. She's a very intense individual, very fun to watch, because she's one of those people you kind of just want to see them succeed, because they're that type of person who will get out there and do the work themselves, bloody knuckles, whatever they have to do to get the job done. And that was the type of player she was, as Marcia said earlier. Hopefully that translates to her basketball players, because they're going to need some help this year, Krista. As we look at both of the sides of the ball, though, men and women, that's why they pay coaches big bucks. You know, the expectations, I think, are a little bit dimmed. I think people know the rosters are depleted. They're going to have to rely on some youth. But let's look at some make-or-break scenarios, the things that will maybe lead to success or lead to a really rough season for both the men and women. Let's start over with Candy Whitaker and the Lady Raiders.
I'm going with her guard play. They really need to step up, make those cuts, go off the screens correctly, make three-point shots. And also, I think if they play defense well, if they can get out in transition and score those easy buckets, that will help them to keep up with teams and pull off a few upsets.
Speed, the imperative word, right?
Amber battle, speed.
Do not have a lot inside. The guards are really going to have to carry it until they can get some reinforcements via recruiting over the next couple years. Over on the men's side, Tubby Smith, of course, they lost a lot of people. They lost some to transfer that weren't helpful, but he did some damage there late in the recruiting process. What is a make-or-break concept for the Texas Tech men?
I think he's got to find the talent and know where to go with it and go with it. I mean, he needs to find the right lineups, the right group of guys that really work together and do the offense quite well together, and I think that will be key. Also, Jay Crockett mentioned that he was going to be playing the 4 spot a little outside on the perimeter, so just to see what he brings to that spot will be interesting to see how the season goes.
And speaking of how the season goes, let's go ahead and take a look at the Big 12 Conference and possibly where the Red Raiders and Lady Raiders might end up in this. And of course, we'll start on the women's side of the conference. A much more open conference this year. A lot of teams with a chance to win here, and I don't think any coach or any fan base are going to cry a lot of tears that Brittany Griner is gone from Baylor. Still a very tough Baylor team, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Odyssey Sims. I think that people thought that it was Brittany Griner that was the main thing, but Odyssey Sims really ran that show at Baylor. But I also think that Oklahoma, with Aaron Ellenberg back, that is going to be a tough battle, and OU could certainly win. It's really hard to say. I have Tech down at 9th, though, although I do think that they can jump Kansas State and jump into that 8th spot.
Yes, definitely a year where if you have a little bit of a weaker roster, you know, and it's not that they have a weak roster, it's that it's a very inexperienced roster.
Everyone has
for
an
Candy
inexperienced
Whitaker.
roster.
You got a chance to make some noise if you hook it up and discover your talent pool. Not one of those years where you're going, oh my God, the conference is basically Baylor and Oklahoma's the duke it out for. That's not the case this year. You got a chance to make some noise if you hook it up. Over on the men's side, Krista, oh my goodness. I think we've been talking about for about 5 weeks now. I think everyone's looking forward to probably the 3 matchups we'll get to see this year between Kansas and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, it's going to be insane. I actually watched Kansas play the first exhibition game on ESPN3, and the freshmen are rusty. They're freshmen, they're inexperienced, but man, their potential is there. Oklahoma State, however, with a little more experience, could upset Kansas and end their streak of Big 12 championships. Also, I think that Baylor has underachieved the last 2 years, and they have the roster to win, but it just depends on if they can actually perform. I have Tech down at 9th, beating TCU in the conference.
And in terms of Texas Tech, Big 12 Ben, I think it may be fair to assess them as a very top-heavy league. If Tubby Smith can do what he's done in the past, which his track record is, he will provide stability and he will make make sure things are done his way. They will be disciplined. It is a conference where they could, if they surprise some people, get up there in the upper half.
Absolutely, it'll be interesting. I think really the line stops at Iowa State. It just depends on what they can do with the roster they have this year. but there is no, oh, we're going to beat this team. Even TCU has their moments, but they played games close last year. So it just depends on how teams go out and execute. I think defense is going to be key. The phrase defense wins championships is always true. Look to see if Tech can guard and get those transition points, come back and stop. I think that'll give them some room to make a run.
Should be a very intriguing year of Texas Tech basketball. Of course, with change comes that hope and enthusiasm that things are going to change for the better, and hopefully for these two basketball programs, they deserve some stability and they deserve to have some things go the right way, and maybe they take a few bumps this year, but I think the future of Texas Tech basketball is very bright.
I think it's going to be, and with all the freshmen they have now and these coaches really instilling their system as a foundation, getting these kids ready to go, I think it will be great in the years to come because they'll know what to expect. They'll know how to work their game in the offseason and really get things going in the years to come.
Krista, that's going to wrap up this show as we look at Texas Tech basketball. Of course, we've got a lot more coverage. Our Texas Tech basketball tab coming out on November the 8th. You can find that everywhere. You can also find it on your iPad and over at LubbockOnline.com and RedRaiders.com. Krista will be locked in all season for full coverage of Texas Tech basketball. Please follow her on Twitter, and you can find her once again over at LubbockOnline.com and RedRaiders.com. That's going to wrap up our preview of Texas Tech basketball for this season. That is Krista Pirtle. I'm Zach Long, and you're on RedRaiders.com.